every time we're like, oh, I should do this, or I should make dinner, or it should look like this. And there's just always weight around that, right? And there's usually some judgment, because if I don't do it right, or if I don't do the should, then it means something about me as a person, right? I'm not good enough. I'm not nourishing my kids well enough. I didn't have enough money to buy the food to make a good, right? There's always all this back stuff that gets really heavy. And that, I think, further contributes to this idea that it's really hard and it's always a struggle. So, like, why bother?
I think the minute I stepped on a practice field for rugby, the calling happened.
An 8-year plan to be on the team. And I was in it within 2 years.
Don't wait until you are a pro to be a pro, right?
And I walk around with a rugby ball sometimes and they're like, what is this child on?
It looks like it was a heavy hit.
It's up, it's not an option.
You know, that's the first time I played like professional.
I'm making rugby money. How can I make money outside of it?
And there's two Scottish guys, and I said, "Oh, you're here for the movie."
That rugby is a game for all shapes and sizes, all cultural aspects.
He looked at me and he says, "You guys are awesome."
Grow rugby, 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 grow rugby.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of Grow Rugby. My name is GiftTime and Bailu, and this is a show where we speak to people about the things that they've done, created, or taken advantage of via rugby. Hi, it's good to be back, y'all. It's good to be back. It's been a crazy last almost year. This is 8-9 months. I mean, obviously, I have not really posted on here since January. So shout out to everybody who's listened to the podcast during the time that I've been on a bit of a hiatus, to say the least. It's been a lot, but I definitely have missed being able to do this on a week-to-week basis and just really properly getting to engage and just be a part of the conversation. And in reality, shoot, so much has changed even since January. And really, I think the last time I really got a really serious interview in was last year before my wedding. So, and that was November. So probably did it October, September, something around that point. And I mean, so much has changed just in the rugby world, from Rugby World Cup, more advancement in MLR, and obviously, settlements when it comes to national teams, club teams, just a lot going on. I'm probably going to actually do that in a separate podcast because, moving forward, I want to utilize this platform a lot more and utilize it for what the total name of this is, which is Grow Rugby. And so in addition to the interviews, I'm probably going to start adding in a few more solo commentaries, some shorter pieces in between, so that, you guys know what's happening, or at least what my thoughts are on what's happening, and then be able to present on that. But it's been a wild ride. And currently am living down here in Brazil, not disassociated from rugby in the U.S., but really growing where the rugby is going to be going to moving forward. Even especially particularly here in Brazil, in an area that is asking for it, which is different. It's different. A lot of people have been asking me, yo, you need to put some rugby out here. You want to put together a team. You got some nice stadiums in the town that I'm in. And, there's a solid rugby team just an hour north who I still need to connect with. I've been here since April, but there's a lot of settling happening at the same time. So enjoying every moment of it here, definitely learning the language and trying to be able to raise in. I might end up doing a few Portuguese podcasts in the future, just because of the fact that you want to be able to connect with the audiences correctly. And people here in Brazil love when somebody knows how to explain things in Portuguese. I mean, who doesn't? Who doesn't like to have their things explained in their language? But like it's different, and people are really appreciative here. So it's been a nice little welcome into the culture in a lot of ways. So look, I'm not gonna bore too much. Like I said, I'm gonna do a separate podcast on this one and just kind of update and tell what's going on. And of course, as we keep going into the future, keep dropping things. So you guys will see a lot more on me on this platform that I've been off of for so many months. And yeah, if you guys can see in the background, see there's just still like a bunch of stuff. I got a different office, but there's a lot of updating still happening, so you'll see it going on. But this week we're already going to be kicking off. Had a great guest, person I got to be introduced to fairly recent, Diane Johnson, who is a natural nutritionist from Canada, and one of the reasons why I connected with her was because of her stance when it comes to youth sports and the way that young kids eat and creating the processes moving forward so that it can be something that establishes into their adulthood. This was a dope conversation. Diane is just a dope person altogether. Like, she great energy, knowledgeable about what she does, and also takes it from experiences. She practices what she preaches, and that's huge when it comes to it. So this wasn't necessarily a rugby conversation in the natural traditional sense, but this was a very important conversation that rugby people, especially as we go further and further into developing the youth side in the States and then even in other countries, want to be able to establish the importance of getting the proper, not just the proper amount of nutrition, but the proper nutrition needed to be able to perform at a high level all the time from an athletic standpoint. And then, of course, just from a personal standpoint, it's always beneficial to be able to know exactly what to do next. So, guys, Diane was amazing, great conversation. Like I said, this was a conversation about her experience, about nutrition, and then of course how it relates to rugby. Guys, stay tuned for it. You're gonna love it. So without further ado, Diane Johnson of Diane Johnson Consulting, Guts, and Just, the nutritionist, expert, master. Check it out.
Grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of Grow Rugby. My name is GiftTime Baylor, and of course, we got a VIP on the podcast today, coming straight out of Alberta, Canada. She is a teacher. She is a coach. She is a nutritionist. She knows wellness and is trying to get your kids and the youth and really setting up our future to actually learn how to take care of themselves at an early stage that a lot of us didn't really know how to do until much, much later in life, and still learning how to do it. Diane Johnson, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today.
Thank you. I think I'm going to record that. That was like the most excited introduction I think I've ever had.
Look, we come in strong. Look, we've had the conversation obviously before, but when we talk about things like nutrition and kind of going into even this era now, how much education we need to know on it, you have to bring the right energy. All right, we bring in the right energy, and it's such a great thing to be able to do. No pandering intended. The voice is still high because I'm excited, but sometimes it sounds like it, but it's like, no, this is really real.
It's so true. I think there's a lot of just kind of a feeling or a dialogue around like nutrition is really hard.
Yeah.
And I certainly we all can experience our challenges within, exploring that and trying new things and that kind of thing. But I don't believe it has to be hard. I don't believe it does. I think it's a mindset shift that we get to step into and can start exploring that makes it all a lot more easy and fun and like free, right? Free feeling.
It's funny. I had a friend of mine tell me we were doing some work together, and she had made this mention. When she had kids initially, she didn't love cooking. She wasn't a big fan of it, and it played into how her kids' health ended up going. But somebody told her, like, the reason she doesn't love cooking is because basically it was because what her mindset behind cooking was. It was not cooking for growth and for love, but it's cooking because for the burden of cooking was basically what she was talking about. And I think it speaks a lot, because even for me, I still have that kind of element where sometimes it's like the idea and the process of cooking still catches me, because my mind goes, I'm hungry now and I just want to eat in this moment. I don't want to wait another 20, 30 minutes. Though, ironically, in purchasing food, we'll still wait another 20, 30 minutes. It's just me not doing the immediate work. So it still falls into the same kind of arena that you already are on. But because of the fact that there's this mindset of the amount of task and work and how much of an output in a slightly negative way, it doesn't make one necessarily lean towards it. But for you, you're saying, again, it's perception as opposed to reality.
Yeah, well, and I think like first of all, like one thing that popped into my head when you were talking is like the number of, I call it shoulds. People talk about shoulds, right? And I say like, stop shoulding all over yourself. Like just every time we're like, oh, I should do this, or I should make dinner, or it should look like this. And there's just always weight around that, right? And there's usually some judgment, because if I don't do it right, or if I don't do the should, then it means something about me as a person, right? I'm not good enough. I'm not nourishing my kids well enough. I didn't have enough money to buy the food to make a good, right? There's always all this back stuff that gets really heavy. And that I think further contributes to this idea that it's really hard and it's always a struggle. So like, why bother? Right. But that I think one of the biggest mindset shifts that I have experienced and that I try to introduce people to, whether that's like an adult client I'm working with, or whether it's a teen athlete, is like, it's not just food, like it's nourishment, right? This is the way that we live our life. And usually if food is feeling really hard, there's often something else in life that's feeling really hard, because it's all connected, right? It's all connected. And so I often think like food is a really cool lens to look at, to sort of get a glimpse of like, where are other things in my life that I can make them more free, more easy, right? If I peel back the shoulds and like, what just feels good right now? And sometimes that is, I don't actually want to cook.
Right.
Well, what's my next best option, right? Or if there's no shoulds around that, then it just gets to be an experience, and we get to make a choice based on how we feel in the moment, and learning to like witness the judgment that we often have around the things that we should or shouldn't be doing, and where that all comes from. It can be a full on like deep dive.
No, but that's real. Like, I didn't even think of it like that, but in reality, it does. It usually is. There's always something that creates a little bit barrier. Again, using the example I said before, for me, it's time. It always feels like there's something that's pressing. I think it's one of those that you pick up from way in life, but it does constitute itself in it, because in its cooking form, because there is also those times where, like, very rarely, mind you, but there's times where you're just like, yo, let me just go make something, and you just enjoy the process, because there's no pressure that goes, there's, like you said, there's no should that goes behind it. It just simply is, you know, I'm just enjoying, and then you just enjoy whatever it is that's been created. I think that happens whenever it comes, for me, I think it's when it comes with grilling or something like that. Like, it's just a very simple process, but in the mind is just the moment, and it doesn't change really the consumption in terms of whether I'm going to eat it more or less, because it's just enjoyed, but it's a peace of mind that goes to it.
Those little like the mindful piece, like you said, just and how and this is why I talk about lifestyle too, because I think just over the years our 9 to 5 typical push, go, burn the candle at both ends lifestyle does not allow for nourishment, really, of body, of heart, mind, soul, all of that. And so when it, like, I talked, I'm like, well, does it have to be that way? Like, if, you know, we get in the logical, we're like, well, the bills to pay and we got to do all the things and the kids got to go to all the sports but does it, right? Does it really? Right. That's only because of it's what we know. It's the lens that we've seen. It's what we've brought up through or we've come up through. And so it's often the only lane that we see. And in that version of our life, everything is fast. Everything is hard. There's always more to do. It's never enough.
Facts.
Where I think, like when I was introduced to changes in nutrition, it was nutrition, but it was also my stress. Like I had to make some pretty big shifts in how I was living, or I wasn't going to live, basically. Right. And so I got introduced to exploring that stuff when I was in my 20s. So I think for me, I mean, that was a challenging time, but it's been able to kind of play through in my life. And so I, like my husband and I, we consciously are very conscious of like, are we living the life that we really want to live that allows us to nourish ourselves in all of these different ways, with food, with time, enjoyment of time, right? So, and like nutrition is a piece that fits into that big puzzle. But I think if we can just start even catching glimpses of, well, does it have to be that way? Right? If we can start asking questions, if we can get curious, that's the key, is curiosity, because there's no judgment in curiosity. It's just like I love the picture of, I have this image in my mind of this little kid with a magnifying glass looking at a bug, like in the grass, and just looking. Like they don't care if it's good or bad. They're just like, why does it have so many legs? Or like, look how big its eyeballs are, right? We can take that perspective into, why do I hate spending time in the kitchen? Like, just as a question. Right. That gives us a platform of just exploration and no good or bad, or no should or shouldn't, but just being curious about like, well, why is that? Is it because life is just so fast that I just don't have time? Well, does it have to be, right? Just all the questions, the curiosity of things, I think is the jumping off point to kind of looking at things a bit differently and giving yourself the opportunity to experience things in a different way, so that eating well doesn't have to be hard. It might be hard now. It might be hard now, really, truly.
But it doesn't have to maintain that kind of struggle.
No, but I think like it's this, you know, the plasticity of the mind, the way that we are able to change our mind. We change our mind, right? Like we can. It's hard. It's not easy, but it is there for us if we choose. And I think I just love the idea of introducing that to people. Well, it might be hard now, but it doesn't have to stay that way forever.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
So I always like to say, because before we really start jumping in, every superhero story has its origin, and I want to kind of jump to your origin on this. So, if you can you tell us, you know, how is it that you started on this journey to this kind of realization and moving forward? But really, how did you get started onto this journey initially?
So if I for a long time, it started when I got sick. So I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis when I was 21, and it took a long time for me to get diagnosed. So by the time they told me what was wrong with me, I was really sick. Like I was in the hospital for a month. I was fed through a tube. The surgeons were always chatting, like, do we need to take the colon out now? Can we, you know, it was pretty touch or go for a while. And I was sick, so I was immediately into everything medical, all the drugs, all the therapy, like everything, only medical stream. And it helped me and it saved me at that point. So I'm super grateful for that. So that would be like that's when it started, because even though the medical process saved me in that moment, when I got out of the hospital and I was trying to taper off medication and all of this, nothing was changing, and I just kept getting sick. Right. So I spent my summers working in the mountains at a backcountry lodge in British Columbia, and I was just surrounded by people who had a different view on a lot of things. Like everything was very natural all around us, and people were handing me books, and my coworkers were doing Reiki on me in the staff lounge. And I was like, what's Reiki? Right? Like, I just like 20, what? No clue, but okay, this feels good. So sure. Just like all these droplets of things that I was so curious about. So when I got out of there, I just started reading. I booked in to see a naturopath, and they immediately started talking about food. And once I was so, I guess, just so astonished that these were the answers and they were so simple. Again, it was hard because I had to cut a bunch of things out of my diet, but it was answers. Like, it was hope. Something could change, and it almost immediately changed for me. It was probably about 2 weeks, and I could start coming off medication.
Oh, wow.
And the light bulb was just going off, like, oh my gosh, like, why did nobody tell me about this?
So in that time, like before you, as you were in the kind of the medical pathway, before you started hitting the naturopathy, what kind of lifestyle was it that you have? Were you an active person? Were you kind of just chill? Like, what was kind of the basis of it, as well as how you knew it was just like so accelerant within you?
Yeah, which I love that, because that's, like I said, when I think about it, the first thing that comes is, well, I got sick. But the reason that that's why I started on this journey is the me of 13, 14, 15, who was overweight, super insecure, acne, didn't want to be seen, didn't want to raise her voice, and yet wanted so badly to be seen, right? My dad and my godfather both were Olympic athletes. All of my mom, my godmom, everyone around me was a post-secondary athlete.
Wow.
My brother was an athlete. I was athletic, but struggling with my weight and just putting myself out there in a sports space, right?
A lot of pressure in that family to be able to be athletic.
And
yeah.
yet, when I think back, it's taken me a while to talk about that, because I never felt like it was from within me. That was where the pressure was coming from. I had full support from a very loving, wonderful family, but it was within me for whatever reason. And so insufficiency. And when that's where it all started. That's where the journey started for me. And I didn't know it was related. Like, if I had known when I was 13 that I was sensitive to wheat, dairy, sugar, spelt, yeast, if I had known that then,
right,
I may never have ended up where I was.
But at the time, it's not something that's talked about. I mean, we're talking about, like, this is something that's only been brought up in heaviness in pop culture in maybe the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And really, anytime before that, it was either hippie mumbo jumbo, or it was far extremest Eastern belief behavior, which goes back to the proverbial hippie mumbo jumbo that was always created. So, you know, it wasn't something where we're sitting back and like, oh, you know, perhaps maybe this plant that we have in all our basis of food. I mean, we're looking even at the food pyramid where wheat is literally the bottom rung, which doesn't make any sense now, is set there. So how could this be the enemy of it? So yeah, no, I can imagine.
Pretty cool. So, like, such a physical journey for sure. Body, physical healing, but so much emotions, feelings, pressure. And that's just the way. But the other thing is, like, I think there's often a lot of people talk about trauma, right? That something really bad must have happened. I don't think anything really bad ever happened to me, but it was whatever the wiring in me was, myself just took on a lot. And it's so interesting, or it makes perfect sense to me now, knowing what I know about energy centers in the body and where we carry things, that I ended up with literally a disease that was eating away my insides, because that is what I was doing to myself.
Right.
Emotionally, right?
Right.
I didn't know. No, you know, you just don't. But so this is just a constant journey. I'm still peeling back layers of worthiness and, you know, all of it. It's, I think, you know, we think about healing. First of all, we don't get to decide how it happens.
Right.
We just get to start somewhere and trust that there's a process there for us, and there's healing to be had for us in whatever way it shows up. But there's just so many pieces. But Yeah.
It takes a whole new kind of spin to the idea of we are what we eat, because it really does. What we take in feeds how the rest of the body wants to go, and the rest of the body feeds the way our mentality ends up placating itself out to. So the strength of that, where, as you said before, it becomes all connected together, and it's very understated, but it's also very immediately impactful.
Yeah. I think we think, like you take the Tylenol and that's the quick fix. Like pain is gone in 20 minutes-ish.
Exactly.
Right. But it's amazing actually how quickly things can change when we look at food, water, thought, belief, right? That those I think we sort of assume that either they don't work or they take a really, really long time. And yeah, they take time. It's slow medicine.
Right.
But often I think the things that we discover about ourselves along the path they happen faster than sometimes we expect.
Oh, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. So kind of continuing on to your journey, you realize, I love it. We're gonna bring this all. It's all connected all together. We're gonna jump through this. All right. Ventured into the Greaux rugby zone. We hit all the depths if we can. But you came off. You're 21 years old. You entered into this, and you started to feel this immediate relief. Obviously, I'm going to make the assumption that the full knowledge of it did not sit into your mind all at one time and just came through. But this was kind of the opening gate. So for you, what happened after that? So was it just like, okay, now you recognize this kind of way of eating and lifestyle, but you're also secluded into this mountain environment where it's easier to control it? So you come back into the real world. What happens?
I think that I was at a point when I started that, like after I left the naturopath's office and they were like, you can't eat wheat, sugar, yeast, spelt, or corn. That was the other one.
Right.
I went straight to the store because I was like, well, there's nothing in my house I can eat. Right. 21-year-old university student. Like everything was bread and pasta and beer.
Was there anything at the store that you could eat? You just talk about the basis of the U.S. economy.
Yeah, I literally spent like 3 hours in the grocery store reading labels. And I was just like, oh, okay. So I ended up leaving with vegetables, fruit, and lean protein. Nothing in a bag, nothing in a package, just real food. And I mean, my mom cooked home meals, all that kind of stuff growing up. But I think, when we're in our teen years and things, like the on the go, eating whatever's around and just eating without really paying attention. So that's just what I was doing. Right. But I think I was at a point of such desperation of like, I can't keep living like this as a 21-year-old. Like, what is my life going to look like? That I just bought in. I just dove into the food, and like you said, I didn't understand all of it. But I just listened to everything they told me. I took every supplement, I ate the food, and things started to change. And I lost all the weight that I had always been unhappy with. Mm-hmm. I finally felt like I was in a body that fit the thought that I had in my mind about what I should look like, be like, right? And it certainly evolved. So like that was my university years. I went away to university to study education. Like none of my roommates were eating what I was doing. I was pretty good with kind of doing what I did because it was a lot of fear for me. I was like, oh, if I don't do it, I'm getting sick again.
Right.
And full disclosure, like I did flare, like I did continue to need medication. I did kind of have my ups and downs through that time, but it was absolutely a foundation. And I knew at least that I was giving my body things that would support it.
Right.
That if I didn't, I was going to be way worse off. And it was also in that time that I think seeing how quickly that shifted for me with just food made me start looking at stress and emotions. And so, I got into yoga, just like exploring. I dabbled in meditation for a while and then got into it more significantly in my 30s. I remember my naturopath giving me homework about like, you need to journal 20 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what?
Again, part of the psychological release.
Getting it out, right? Dumping all of that out of the mind and the body. I remember also being introduced to EFT, the tapping. So
what is EFT?
Now I'm gonna forget the name of it. I can send it to you.
Don't you hate it when it happens? It's like, I've had it on the always. Till you need it.
I got a sheet from my naturopath. They're like, it's basically you tap at different areas of the body and you repeat a mantra or an affirmation, and it's reprogramming subconscious patterns.
Right.
And interesting. So that was, maybe when I was 23, and interestingly enough, that has just come back into my life now. Right. So I'm tapping again. But yeah, it's just been little dribbles kind of all along the way. But absolutely, like, I did also have surgery. Like, at some point I did decide that I was ready to be done with the ups and downs of chronic disease, and I chose surgery. And there were a lot of people that, applauded me. And there were also practitioners of mine that told me I should never, ever, ever consider it. And so I think, even through the whole process, coming to a point in my life where I could land in a decision for myself and trust that it was the right one for me, regardless of anything else. And for me as a person, that was a big step, to be able to just stand in myself and say, no, this is my choice and it's my body and I get to decide. And it was, 3 months after that, I was pregnant. It was insane.
Oh wow. So that's a lot of trauma in a very short period of time in terms of like physical. So I was going to say, did you feel that the lessons that you learned in terms of the food health up to that point actually probably set you up better for what a post-surgery recovery would actually be, versus if you had gotten to surgery at an earlier stage without actual having, alternative knowledge? Do you think that would have,
Absolutely. It took me actually a long time to be in this holistic space, to advocate for natural and holistic and alternative therapies, knowing that I failed. I chose surgery.
Right.
Like, that was a whole thing that I had to come around for myself. And like you said, understanding that it was all of that learning, all of those experiences, the strategies, all of it that I gained that got me to that point to allow me to thrive through that kind of traumatic surgery.
Right.
That, coming out of the hospital, I knew what to eat, based on the fact that I no longer had a colon.
Right.
How to put good quality foods in my body when I wasn't allowed to have any fiber. Had I not gone through all of that, all of the learning, all of the training, the holistic nutrition, it all set me up for success.
Right.
And, I healed quickly. It was the craziest time of my life. I had surgery in June. In August, I got married. In October, we left to go travel in Australia in a van for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
I had an ostomy bag. So I was.
Oh, so you had wow.
And the day before we left, I was like, oh man, could I actually be pregnant? And I took a pregnancy test. We were literally packing up our house to get on a plane the next day to go across the world. And I
find out, boom, pregnant.
Boom,
wow.
And then so off on a tangent, but the seat in front of it, both my husband and I were just like, what the literal, what? And in the plane, on the seat in front of us was a young family with a baby, probably a 4 or 5 month old baby that kept popping over the seat and looking at Nick and I. And I was just like, you must be an angel, just here to tell us that this is going to be okay. Right.
Awesome.
Such cool things happened after. Lots of cool things happened in my life, but those was just abundance, just dropping in, drop. It was crazy. Yeah.
It's a level of reassurance that that adds, again, it goes back to that psychological, almost borderline ethereal kind of level of trying to understand how life moves forward, because you have all these this lineup and build up, and of course the roller coaster of struggle that goes in between there. But to know that each one seems to have had its own reward at the end of each struggle. Continues on. I guess gives it reassurance. You guys still ended up going to Australia, right?
Oh yeah. The first doctor I saw was in the Blue Mountains, just outside of Sydney. She's like, "Yes, you are pregnant." Like,
nice.
Oh my God.
So from that point, what took it from being a self journey to now wanting it to be more external and expressive one for other people? Was it that first child that set it up, or was it just a very smooth guided path for you?
So I remember telling my dad when I was 5, when he asked me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "A teacher." And that has always been, I was a high school phys ed teacher. When I was really struggling kind of in the middle of everything with my health, I stepped away from that to study nutrition.
Okay.
And kind of by accident, but also not. It was opportunities to go into classrooms with past teacher friends of mine, to talk to athletes, because I had been coaching a lot. So it was, all of those connections that started pulling me and saying, "Well, will you come and share with us what you've been learning?"
Coaching and naturopathy.
Mostly a focus in nutrition, but because I was in like the athletic stream of things in my teaching and coaching, it was often teacher friends, like phys ed classes and sports performance and teams that were, "Well, come talk to my athletes about nutrition."
What were you coaching specifically?
My sport has always been volleyball. Nice. Yeah, so I played. That was my sport. That's what I grew up watching. My dad played in the Olympics. It's a family thing, I guess.
It's literally in the blood. Wait, is this also what your mom did as the post-secondary as volleyball as well too?
She did play. She also did some track and field, and my godmother played. So yeah, and then it was at one point my dad was coaching with the national team, and so there were always like high level athletes, like they were at our house for barbecue, and we're watching them, so it was always just around. So volleyball's been a game I've loved for a long time.
Oh yeah, it was stuck in there. It was going to be a part of your life, whether you wanted it or not.
Yeah, so that's where I guess it started. Transition to teaching about food or nutrition. And it was just really interesting in those first few times getting into the classroom and talking to kids. And I think I had a bit of just a preconception that they're mostly just eating junk food. So really this is a conversation about quality. That was my thought process going in. And what has kind of the realization over the years of doing different activities and reflections and things with the kids in these classrooms is that quality, yes, but more so even quantity, especially for young athletes, because their demands are so high. And was going into classroom after classroom and just seeing that they're actually not even eating anywhere close to enough, regardless of what it is. And then I was also at that time working in a volleyball club and just seeing a lot of challenges, seeing unhappy kids and unhappy parents and not performing to a level that they were excited about or not enjoying things. And just, again, the struggle, right? Always struggling. And I was like, that is not what I believe sport to be, right? I believe so much in the lessons that sport, the abundance of sport, the enjoyment, I'm like, where is that? And so I think from my own journey, such powerful answers coming through food and then seeing what these kids were missing, I was like, there's no foundation there for them, right? We want to play well. Yeah. They want to play well, but with what fuel? Right. How are we doing that? We want to go to the gym and get stronger, but we don't have enough energy in our day to get through school. Right. Never mind practice and then to the gym and then to all the other things that a young athlete or a teen goes through. So again, like you mentioned, the smooth process, there was really no smoothness. It was sort of like a step and fall over and be like, oh, wait, that was cool. Okay, well, let's do some more of that and go a couple more steps and fall the other way and figure that out and come back. So yeah, but it's been really cool to see some of these athletes embrace it and the changes that come for them.
So for you, whenever you were looking through, as you're starting to kind of, in one way or another, research these kids, both in experience, from your personal experience, and obviously, your initial premise was just based off of the quality versus the quantity of food. But did you see any of your particular athletes that you were like, let me try a test to see if I can help them on an individual, like maybe one of you, a potentially high performing volleyball, or one of your friends, one of their athletes? Did you see something where it was that particularly stood out to really actually kind of create the thread where you really were seeing the higher need for the mixture, the balancing of food and in its quantity and quality? Like, did you see where it actually started to see direct effects on their performance?
Well, I was also at some point along the way trained as a yoga teacher. And so I did a lot of yoga teaching also with student athletes. Right. So kind of over the years, my teaching to them also incorporated the sort of the stuff I've been sharing with you, like on a, downplayed, but it's about food, fueling the body, but we also have to rest and we want to be happy. Right. So this, again, like the full circle thing. So I was doing sort of just like one-off yoga sessions, one-off nutrition, things here and there, and had the opportunity to work with the women's volleyball program at the University of Calgary, which is
nice,
not far from where I live. And they were dealing with a lot of athletes who were injured, dealing with some health issues, and generally the team was not performing the way that they wanted it to. And so the coach was sort of looking at a holistic picture, like how do we get these athletes really thriving so they play well too. And so I came in, we did nutrition with every athlete. There were, I think, 19 of them on the team that year. And we did bi-weekly yoga with them, which we laughed, the coaches, we would laugh and say, like, this is essentially forced rest. They don't know how to intentionally rest. They can lay on the couch and scroll on their phone or watch a movie, but it's not the same.
Right.
So we started this, and I was with that program for 2 years, and then I wish it wasn't so far from my house, which is why I stepped away, because I was driving so much and it just was
what is that? Almost Alberta, Calgary. What is that, like a 2-hour turnaround each way?
It would be total about 2 hours. It was an hour from my house to the university, so it just got tricky. But in 2 years, the coach statted it, and she said an 80% decrease in injury and illness in a 2-year process. So that was nutrition. I did multiple sessions with every athlete through the season. We had bi-weekly rest, which we were doing yoga, but it wasn't like workout yoga.
It's actually helping them shut the mind down and actually relax the body. It's
Yeah, because recovery doesn't happen when we're constantly going all the time. Like I kind of chuckle, we see teams, like especially youth sport teams, right? And they're like, okay, recovery, like 5-minute stretch. Everyone's like there in the circle trying to touch their toes and talk to their friend. And sure, like the kids get some benefit from that. But in terms of recovery, the body doesn't recover when it's firing all the time. That's not when it happens. So we made them deeply rest twice a week and fueled their body. And they had also working with a trainer that was amazing. And 80% decrease in injury with this holistic perspective on how do we help the athletes thrive, body, mind, soul. And then look they won Canada West that year.
That's amazing. It's really interesting to me, because you would think that in the collegiate environment, an area that is almost particularly used as a petri dish for health and development in a lot of areas, that had such a poor display or poor preparation for it. For you, is it something that, I guess it is, but for you, is it something that you see consistently, like, to no fault of University of Calgary's own, like they only know what they know, but is it something that you see being consistency in a lot of sports environments, that there is a lack of understanding of what true recovery actually means, and there is a poor understanding of what legitimate nutrition, especially nutrition support for elite levels of play.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I certainly can't speak for every program, but doing this work, and part of what I try to do every week is just talk to people, is talk to coaches, talk to elite athletes that have gone through, maybe they've just finished their post-secondary career or whatever. I'm trying to always learn more about what their experiences have been. When I was at UFC with those particular athletes, there were, these amazing athletes that are like 6'4" and jumping out of the gym and all of this. And they would eat cereal for breakfast, like one bowl, and they'd have a salad before a 4-hour match. And and that's what they've been doing for their whole elite sport, right? Because these were elite. These kids have always been elite. Never told how to actually fuel their body through growth, right? Now they're done growing. So now it's really like, let's support the demands, the activity demands, but all through growth and development, no information. And last week I was chatting with a couple of guys in the States that played baseball, and it was very, they're like on the farm team for the major leagues, and they're still not getting any nutrition support. They said the guys on the big leagues, they might, they get catered meals and stuff. They might have a nutritionist with the team.
Nothing significant.
And it for me, I think looking at starting off with the youth population in terms of youth athletes, and then seeing what the university kids, where they were starting their university journey as an athlete, like if they had started when they were 13 with a basic understanding of these are the foods that I need to eat to give me energy, so when I go to practice, I actually feel good and I can play good. Right? That even alone would make a difference for them at university. So that's, I think, part of my, I love working with that young age group, but I just see, if we can plant the seeds when they're young, what is possible for these young athletes?
Yeah, it's funny because my friend she was a track and field athlete, and when this was exactly her story. When she was younger, 13, 14 years old, actually 10 to 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, she always was able to perform at the highest level at that time. But her thing was she was always, she was nutritionally depleted prior to the game because she would never eat before a meet, because if she eats, it makes her feel heavy or weighed down and give a poor impression, until she started getting into collegiate level, where now you're performing at a much higher level, at a much more consistent level. And she started to feel the lack of nutrition in her performances. And it actually started to pull back to the point where she ended up having to step away from track and field at some point in time. One of many reasons, but that was one of them, was the fact that she was just not able to perform at that same level that she had during her high school and preteen years. And so, when you speak about the fact of, what athletes need to have, we always talk about, we know that you need to have good food, especially at least afterwards, but that beforehand, there's so much worry because if I eat too much, am I going to be too heavy? Or am I going to get sick if I'm going to get running? Or how long before I eat, or is it going to be something that makes me sluggish at the wrong time? So whenever you speak to athletes on it, how is it that you describe to them to kind of set their nutrition timing between when they have to perform and what they have to do from a day-to-day basis?
So I think for young, most of the athletes I work with are between the ages of 12 to 18, sort of school aged, right? So for me, there's a lot of conversation about this. If you eat, your pregame snack 30 to 45 minutes before you play, and then when you're done, you're going to have your post-game snack after you play. Just even simple for them, right? Yeah. You need to eat and you play, and you eat and you play. And then we focus on, what does that pregame look like? Well, it's got carbohydrates in it. It's easy to digest, so it's going to give you quick fuel. And then after, we're going to get some carbohydrate again to replenish, and we're going to get some protein to recover. Like just keeping it pretty simple for them, but it's also for them daily. So we talk about performance, like game day. What does that look like?
Right.
But game day might only be like 1 or 2 days a week.
Right.
What's happening every other day? And those are the days when they're not eating breakfast because they're rushing out of the door to go to school. Their lunch hour at school is 30 minutes long, and they spend 3/4 of that in line waiting in the cafeteria to get often not great quality food that doesn't digest well, and they don't have time. And then they didn't have time because they were busy last night, so they didn't pack a snack, right? So it's very individual for each kid. We give like general, right? This is, you're going to do this and you're going to rest, and you're going to do this and you're going to rest. But to understand that every single one of them is facing their own challenges around eating, whether that is they're so overwhelmed in their mind that they can't rest. They don't feel like eating because their body is doing everything else except digesting food, right? To what's available in the home, to just understanding what foods are going to help them, to what's happening with peer groups, like what they see in the media. Like they have more challenges with eating than anybody else.
I mean,
typically there's nothing there for them to like, let's help you through this.
So, kind of rolling back to what we were talking about at the beginning was the perception and the mindset that goes into creating and preparing your own food. At that age, obviously, as you spoke, there's school and, there's social pressures and, you have your own personal time. So what are some things that, you suggest to kids early, and obviously can resonate into adults, but definitely starting it early? What is it that you suggest to parents to teach their kids to properly learn how to prepare their food and be able to be properly ready and in the right mindset that this isn't a burden, but this is part of the process?
Yeah, it's I was actually chatting with the club director yesterday about like we need to support the parents, because the parent, as busy as the kids are, the parents are busy, and they are, and we, our kind of generation, we've grown up in like the go, push, do all the things. We're in that lane of lifestyle, right? And so nourishment, food, rest, they all are coming last.
Right.
But there's not enough time. I have to do the things, right? So I think, and that's a hard thing to change, because people are, unless someone is ready to explore that, I feel it's all we can do is, like you said, plant the seeds, like offer different insights, provide education, like give space where they can step in to learn, and maybe they'll take something away and they try it. And it's a process of slowly changing things over time. But I try to bring across that, like, this idea, like, it doesn't have to be hard. There are ways to find good quality food that isn't breaking the bank, because it's tricky out there right now for that, for sure. There are ways to create good quality food that isn't, going to take you 3 hours in the kitchen or an hour in the kitchen, and helping, whether that's giving them recipes or giving them meal plans, or, inviting them into a space to chat. That I try to, it's tricky for the parents for sure. And as much as I talk to the kids, fully understand that they leave my sessions and then they go home. Right. And then it's the life, it's all of the things that are going on there. What's been cool though is to hear from the kids that, like, oh, well, after we left, then I went home and talked to my mom and dad about this, and now we have this in the kitchen. So maybe now we have some quinoa or some hemp hearts, and I'm putting them in my smoothie. Amazing. Right? There's a win. Right.
So I was going to say, like, is there some examples that you can probably give to us of some solutions that some kids have, some of your students have used in the past, or have used presently, that might, jog off some ideas for others to figure stuff out?
So smoothies, I guess, I mean, pretty common, but they're invest in a good blender and add vegetables into your smoothies because you won't taste them, and you can pack a ton of nutrients into a smoothie. You can divide it up. You can you can use it at different points in the day. It's fast. The other nice thing for young athletes, especially one of the biggest things in the last year I've been hearing from kids, is that they don't feel like eating.
Right.
And this for me is back into like, they're just so busy. The body's not ready for food. And that's the message that they're getting. Like, I don't want to eat. So smoothie is nice because you can just sip on it. The nutrients are there. It's already broken down. It's not stressing your digestive system. So that's but invest in, if you can, even get one secondhand, a good quality blender that will actually break all that stuff that really fibrous the vegetables and things down. Otherwise you're left with like chunky things and nobody likes that. So that's I think a great strategy. Also, like for parents who are cooking meals, cook more. Like if you're cooking chicken breasts one night, cook a double or a triple batch and put the rest of it in the freezer. So on the night when everyone is running around and people maybe not even sitting down to eat dinner together, you can throw it in the oven or the microwave, warm it up, put it out, and it's there. It was 10 minutes versus another hour in the kitchen. And that'll save money too. And even like with the cost factor, like just put some pots in your house and grow lettuce, grow kale.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Does it take a lot of time to be able to do that?
No. If you have a window, you have some sunlight in your space, or you can get a grow light, like just pots with things. And this is credit to my husband, who's an organic master gardener. So we have things growing everywhere. But I think we sometimes are, well, I don't have a garden. You don't need a garden. Grow some herbs, grow some greens, add them to things. It seems like maybe, it's $3 for a head of lettuce or $4 for a head of lettuce, but that's $4 less that you have to spend, and it just continues to grow in your house.
Right. And you have those return seeds, and you don't have to worry about how long does it usually take for those to grow? Do you know?
I would probably have to ask ask the expert who's outside right now, but he created for us, like at our house, we have some outdoor wicking beds, so they're fed from water off the roof, so we don't really have to water them. We got some kale and things growing in there, and where we are, it's only now starting to warm up. Right. So he planted those probably in March, but because they're in these little mini greenhouses, they're already starting to grow. So if you can grow them in your house, probably takes a few weeks for them to actually, to be able to harvest. But once they start, you can just clip the lettuce off. You don't have to pull the whole thing, right?
Oh, and it'll regrow itself back.
It grows itself. So things and it's kind of just like a new way of doing things that, not everyone is growing things, but we could. No, really, once it's planted in the ground, it doesn't take a lot of time. Might have to water it a bit. Maybe that'll help you remember to water yourself. So,
giving all this good water to these plants, maybe my body could use it as well.
I'm going to eat this beautiful, and that's the other thing, like the energy around food, and I don't need to get into it, but like you nourished this plant. Right. You put your own energy into this growing thing that is then going to nourish you. Like that is a cool exchange of energy, and that in itself, regardless of the food, is nourishment.
Right.
No, so I don't necessarily get into that with the young athletes, but little ideas like that for parents. I know protein powders are a huge thing for young athletes, which is tricky because they're not made for kids. Right. The nutrients aren't, it's not based on what they need. It's based on adult bodybuilders, basically.
Right.
So, are there other things we can do? Sure. Add some quinoa to your smoothie. If it's a good blender, it'll blend it up. That's protein. Add some hemp hearts. Right.
When it comes to the protein, do those alternatives provide a similar amount of protein as you would from a protein powder? Because I know, especially when it comes to like obviously this is a rugby podcast. When it comes to rugby players, we're dealing with impact. We're dealing with things that you're trying to build muscle, you're trying to create more durability against your body. So a lot of it, and especially when it comes to muscle development, you want to bring that out faster, especially when you're younger. You want to see that happen. Does quinoa help enough to be able to facilitate what that can be, or are there other alternatives, or is it just something to add into and it can create an additional supplement to what you need on a different foundational basis?
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts. Like, I try to advocate for balance. So I have, here anyway, where I am, and like we are like the beef place, right? Like everyone's, it's all the beef, all the cows, all the time. That like animal proteins certainly have all the amino acids that we need for that building, right? And we're going to use that and benefit from it.
Right.
However, it doesn't have to be our only source of protein. And, if you look at, I don't know if you've seen anything about the blue zones, like the places in the world where people are living the longest. Now, they're not necessarily high performing athletes, but just generally longevity and like enjoyment of life at an old age. They typically eat less animal protein than we do.
Right.
So they still have animal protein, but they're also consuming more plant-based protein. So quinoas, beans, lentils, nuts, seeds, those kinds of things. And they just have a beautiful balance of how it all works together. So I think certainly for athletes, especially, it's really important to make sure there is enough protein coming in. But we can do that with a variety of foods. So yeah, maybe you use the protein powder and maybe there's some quinoa in there too. And you have a little bit of hemp hearts in your smoothie to, give you, because it's about protein, but it's also about nutrients. And if we're always eating the same foods all the time, we're always getting the same nutrients all the time. We end up with a whole bunch of some things and not enough of others.
Right.
So if we can just have variety and like balance, bring in lots of different stuff, try a new protein source each week, or go on a bit of a rotation. Maybe you have a meatless Monday, but then, Tuesday you're having chicken. And, that most people that I have encountered get an adequate amount of protein in their diet as long as they're consuming animal protein. I have worked with some athletes who've decided to be vegan, not to say that you can't be a vegan athlete. You certainly can, but you do need to pay attention and make sure that you're getting the protein that you need, simply because you require more plant-based proteins to get to that level that you would get from like an animal base. So it just is, again, it's just a different path with a different awareness about what key things you're focusing on in your body.
Yeah, I was gonna say the other part is how much of a plant-based, because obviously it's picking up a lot more now, and we're seeing more repercussions from animal farm behavior, obviously, whether it's from forestry loss to gases, et cetera, like that. So a lot of people are moving towards, and sometimes even from a lot of times now, even from a health perspective, moving towards more vegetarian, more vegan elements. Is there a way? But do you suggest ways of being able to supplement the additional levels of protein that you needed from plant-based items that wouldn't come from animal amino acids? Basically, let me restate that question. Is there ways, what are other alternatives of animal proteins that can be used to make up that same amount of protein and while also obviously still getting your nutrition from your B12s, your A's, D's, C's, et cetera, like that?
Yeah. There's some stuff out there about like pea protein. Usually it comes in a blend, so you'll find like a pea or a rice protein in terms of a supplement that could be used instead of like a straight up whey protein. If that, like having the supplement to top things up is something that's required. I always, especially for young athletes, because again, supplements aren't necessarily tested or created for young athletes, is like to put oats in a smoothie, put quinoa in a smoothie, put hemp hearts in a smoothie. It gives them extra calories, it gives them bulk, and it does add protein to that thing. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm sort of forgot your question, or if I'm off on a different tangent from your question.
Hey, it all works. It all works. It's all connected, Diane.
But yeah, it's protein's one that it comes up a lot. It's always a question, and usually with athletes, it's the focus. Yeah. I need more protein. I need more protein. Yeah. Sometimes they do. Most of the time, most of the athletes that when I meet them, they're having at least 3 to 5 servings of animal protein a day. And that will typically get them where they need to be, unless they have really high demands, and then we look at it. But I think the thing too is that it is so individual. And when it comes to like, are you the meat eater or the omnivore or are you the vegan? I really think it's an individual thing. People are different biologically, ancestry, DNA. There was a book I read years ago called Eat Right for Your Blood Type, which it keeps coming up. So I think I need to go back and read it. But it was not long after I discovered that wheat and dairy and those kinds of things were not really great for my blood type. Mm-hmm. And that was exactly the foods that I had cut out and started to thrive without them. Whereas there were other blood types that specifically thrived on a plant-based diet. And, you know, research, you might hear yeses and nos about this, but it was an interesting philosophy based on like where your ancestors started on this earth and what they were eating.
That makes sense.
Right? That like
that
this
perfect
it's still a part of us. I know for me, at least at this point in my life, I would struggle with a plant-based diet. I've got a big frame. I have more muscle mass. I don't, in my gut, think that I would thrive only with plants. Also, my digestive system, the way it is, would struggle breaking down some of the beans and things on a regular basis. However, I've met other people that it's the complete opposite for them. And once they cut out animal protein, they felt amazing. And it can also change in our lifetime.
Right.
I think that's one thing with nutrition, we get into like, well, this is the way I eat. Well, I have had to modify my diet several times, and I'm sure it will continue to evolve as I get older. Right. But that we get to do that. It gets to be, it flows with us. It's not like locked in forever.
That I really appreciate that sentiment, because I think that is something that, again, it's part of the process. And sometimes it feels like it's a cop-out, but it's not. That there's not a one-size-fits-all dietary plan. There's the idea that some plans will work for some people, some don't work for others. So it's not I'm vegetarian and vegetarian works consistently across board. No, we see it where sometimes you do need the animal, sometimes you don't need. Maybe you take all of it out and you become vegan. It does seem to vary, and it's good to know. I guess it's just the question of trying to find that right balance and be able to have a better understanding of the body, which I guess goes back to the psychological and spiritual journey that this diet ends up being on.
Yeah, I think like one of the things to consider is just like to really tap into like what your body is showing you. So if you feel heavy or bloated or really tired after a meal, okay, what was in that? That's, I think it often is just our normal, right? So this is just the way I feel after I eat, and that's just the way it is. Is that really? Does it have to be like that? Probably not, right? Like our body's constantly trying to achieve balance and homeostasis. So it will give us messages when it's not at that point. So if our skin is breaking out, if we have massive headaches, if we're achy all the time, that heavy, so much is felt in the gut, so much, but we're very good in our world at shutting it down because there's this to do and that to do, and it's too hard. But if we just can sit back, get still for a moment and just notice, again, curious about what is going on, what is my body showing me?
Right.
And sometimes it's then some experimentation. Well, what if I took this out for a week?
Right.
And maybe through that, right? Then, oh, wait, my knees don't hurt right now. Oh my God. Right? Light bulb. And then, and 3 years down the road, it might change. Right? But it is a process of like tapping into it's awareness of ourselves, our bodies, what we feel, what we are thinking. Awareness is a big piece.
I love that. Final question for you. You know, as you continue this journey, what is the thing that you feel has been a reoccurring moment that you keep finding in this process, that it keeps being a reminder over and over and over again?
This too would probably be different every day, but today, for the last few days, and I know something that was a theme for me as a kid is the worthiness. Actually, I'll show you this. So I have cards that I pull for myself every once in a while, and this is the card.
Oh, nice.
That I pulled actually just before we got on this call.
I love it.
Yeah. So the worthiness piece, that I deserve love. I deserve to love myself exactly as I am. I don't need to fit into any image or idea that, like, I think there's so much waiting. Well, I'll do it when this happens, or I'll be happy when I lose weight, or but it's like, no, what's there now? Like, you're worthy of it all right now. And if you can start there, like that, my focus the last few days of like, I'm worthy of drinking 4 of these water bottles today. Right. And when it's about me, it doesn't feel like a chore.
Right.
I'm worthy of taking my shoes off and going and walking in the dirt in the garden today, when I could be sitting on the computer, but I'm not going to, because I'm worthy of just grounding and like getting in contact with the earth and nourishing myself. I'm worthy of that. Right. That it's, I think self-care has even become a chore. Oh, I need to do my self-care.
Right. It goes legitimately against the whole purpose of it in that very mindset. Self-care
gets to be the way that we live, right? The way that we eat, the way that we consume, the way that we love, the way that I tell my husband I love him, that nourishes me. Right. I get a hug from my kids, nourishes me. It's just, I think it's it's retraining the brain about how we conceptualize. Yeah, self-care could be a bath, or I take myself and get my nails done. Sure, that could be self-care, but self-care could be paying attention to my thoughts when I wash the dishes.
Word.
Right? So, yeah, that would be the theme right now, the worthiness of that continual care for self.
I love that. Diane, I want to thank you so much for you just taking the time. That was amazing. I feel nutritious in the soul right now, and with the knowledge and just kind of the what's the best way of putting it? The comfort of knowing that this isn't just a ABCD battle, but it's also it's one that is as much internal as it is what we take externally in. I don't know if it necessarily made it less complicated, but I think it at least made it a little bit more fluid, which is always a big plus. But I want to thank you so much for being able to take the time. Where can people find you at?
Okay. So I'm on, because we connected on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn, Diane Johnson. What I share there is primarily for the youth sport community or sport community. I'm on Instagram at DJ Wellness and at It Takes Guts, which is the youth sport focus more so. And then I'm on Facebook at Diane Johnson. And what else? I have a website, which is www.djwellnessconsulting.com.
Excellent.
I do have a YouTube channel, but it's not, I don't know, there's stuff on there you can check out, and it's just me. I don't know, it's there.
What you're saying is you need to get more active on it, all right? You need to bring this into the internal as well, too, all right?
Actually, I will mention, I'm starting something next Tuesday that I'm calling The Weekly, and it is simply a weekly conversation about nutrition and lifestyle. And it's happening in a Facebook group, but it will be on a Zoom. So I'm sort of figuring out the logistics of that, but it's just a space to come. It's consistent conversation. It's new ideas, new perspectives.
Do you know when you're going to be announcing it? Where you can announce it so that people can access the platform? Because it's not going to go out like today. It's going to probably go out next week or a couple weeks from now. So
I'll be sharing stuff both on like on my Instagram at DJ Wellness. I'll be posting it on there, so you can follow it along or find out how to get access to that kind of thing. Excuse me. Our conversation this coming Tuesday will be mostly about cravings.
Nice.
So yeah,
nice.
that'll be a good one.
Slowly bring the people in. I love it. Diane, thank you again so very much. Like I said, this is awesome. And look, I will say this because I have to say it in full honesty. I make fun of Canada a whole lot, but you've made it a lot more difficult for me to tease Canada. Not too much more difficult, but a little bit more difficult.
That's awesome. That's fair. We can take some teasing right now. Yeah. Oh well, thank you so much. I love chatting with you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Diane, I appreciate this so much, and I hope you guys were able to glean something from this. This was a lot of great information to take, a lot of experience to be able to pull from. So, guys, if you get a chance, definitely go check out some of the other episodes and just recap who we talked to. We're bringing it back hard and gonna go as much as we can. And no, it's a lie. That makes it sound like there's finite amount. No, we going all the way. We're getting in. We're gonna try and make sure we learn more about people like never before, and just continue to be able to be on that process. Something we started a while ago, and we're coming back again for so many reasons. Just so many reasons. Mainly, I miss being able to do it. So, in the meantime, I want you guys to absolutely know that I hope that you're happy. I hope that you're healthy, and I hope that you know that you are highly favored all the way through. Until next time, cheers.